Marbs here. Welcome to Intellivision Sunday. Before I hand things back over to GamerGhostDad, just want to remind folk, console modding is not for everyone, and if you're not an experienced console modder, it's probably best left to the unprofessionals. There are a number of resources within the Intellivision community that are more than happy to help you mod your Intellivision and get the most out of it. So, let me turn things back over to Ghost Gamer Dad, and he will take the wheel.
Hello everyone, GamerGhostDad here in our collaboration with Marvelsman on upgrading our Sears Super Video Arcade Intellivision into Ultimate Intellivision, so it can be used with modern TVs and hardware, and Marvels can really go through and enjoy the library on actual hardware. So we just did a video on disassembling the controllers and going through cleaning the controllers. Now we're going to move on to actually disassembling the Intellivision itself. That way we can get all the plastic pieces out, we can wash them, get them nice and pristine, and get the electronics out where we can work on them and start the process of doing the actual electronics modding from there. So this console, if you ever have seen the back bottom, in fact if you look at our prior videos of the Intellivision 1, the bottom is 100% the same. The stickers will be a little bit different, as you can see here, but the only tool you'll really need is a Phillips head screwdriver. I like to use a PH1 head, or excuse me, a PH2 head for my screwdriver, and you need something with a long, thin shaft to be able to go into some of these crevices. If you have a fat screwdriver, sometimes those don't fit, but you want to be able to reach down, particularly in these here. But let's go through where the screws are to take this apart. So we have one here, here, and here. So on both sides of the cartridge. So let's start on the back here, where it's probably easiest for you to see. Oh, hear that nice crisp crack? I like hearing that. That, to me, that sounds indicates that this has not been opened ever. And from a repair standpoint, that's what we like to see. Unless it was previously professionally modded, that's okay too. But that crack just means it's a fresh console that no one has been into. Okay, going on to the next screw here. Oh yeah. Again, you want to make sure to have a good place to keep all your screws together as you progress through modifying and opening the console, so you can remember where everything went through. Sometimes it's nice to take pictures as you're taking the console apart, or if you're able to record the process, so you can go back and freeze frame and be like, that's where that screw went. These screws coming out of the bottom are all the same size, have a rounded head, so at least they're easy to identify which one will go where when we put it back together. Go, get the front here. Screw number 4. And then the cartridge port screws. Screw 5. And finally, screw 6. Okay, it'll come out when we take the top off. Okay, after you have all the screws, you might have to apply a little pressure to get this out. Again, just making sure I do have all the screws. But the top should just kind of lift off. There, it kind of popped off. And when you do, be careful. The buttons, specifically the on-off button, is going to fall out. The reset button is stored in a different way. There goes the button. And I'm going to carefully turn this over so I can get this other screw that didn't fall out. So, total of 6 screws, all the same kind, off the bottom. And here is our first look on the inside of the console. And this part of the console is gonna take a bath. Now this is a little larger than my ultrasonic cleaner, so we're gonna go old school and actually put it in a tub with some clean materials. But I'll take you along that journey when we go there too. But definitely needs a little bit of cleaning there. And here we are. Now we're on the inside of the console. Let me move the power cable here so you can see things a little better. So from the top view, you can see our power switch that slides on and off. You can see the transformer. The AC power goes directly into the transformer. From there, it goes into our power supply board, which will separate out the different lines of volts that it needs, the 3 volt, the 5 volt, the 12 volt, and then put it to the various components that are there. You do see the DB9 controller ports here. What's interesting is that these are, the connection to the board are exactly the same as the Intellivision ones. You'll see a port here, and underneath there's a port here as well, where the actual controller DB9 connectors connect to. These are the trays where the cables will go. So when you put your controllers are like this, you can push the cables up on inside. And that's really actually the next place we're going to go is to take this apart is to remove this little plastic piece. First, let's remove the DB9 connectors. They just gently push backwards. And again, I do mean gently. This console is old and the plastic can be relatively brittle. I say old, but these consoles have really stood up across the test of time as well. But do be gentle as you work with those items. So let's disconnect those, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws to remove for this little plastic compartment where the cables were setting. So again, we will keep those in a slightly different compartment over here. 1, 2, 3. Does help to have a slightly magnetic head, since we're not dealing with anything that is sensitive to that. 4, 5, and 6. Okay, and then this piece just lifts right up, and we will clean that with the rest of the console. So now, just to share what we're looking at, we have the actual console itself. This part right here is the Intellivision of what makes up the entire Intellivision. This is the power supply board. You know, you could probably design something that where you had a big old brick Xbox 360 style that just contained this portion and had a really tiny console. On the Intellivision 2, they worked to really make everything smaller and more efficient. So everything on the component board was a little smaller, and the Intellivision was a little smaller. But, at this point, we have a couple things we could disconnect. I'm going to disconnect the transformer from the power board. Now, if we were troubleshooting and we had some issues, this is where we actually might do some tests. We could test the power supply for different voltages that are coming out. We have verified that this works and taken actual video footage, so we don't have to. So let's disconnect the transformer there. Be very careful around these caps. I mean, just because everything's not plugged in, these caps do hold power as time goes on, so just avoid those items. The next thing I'm going to unplug is the 12 volt rail. So this has 12 volts going into it, so just carefully disconnect that. And then here is the number one area where you really need to be careful when you're disassembling a Intellivision 1 or a Sears Video Arcade, is this ribbon cable. It can get very brittle over time, and it's very difficult to move out. I'm actually going to pull out a pair of tweezers to kind of help me pull this out gently, and just go straight out and gently pull this aside. So you can see here we have the different pins. Each pin will send a different voltage or have ground carried or a signal. In some cases, if this ever does break, or I've seen the actual wires come loose, you may need to manually wire the power supply there. Looking at the console, it looks like we had a little bit of a spill right here at some time, so we'll take a look and make sure that's all okay. But at this point, I think we can take out the power supply board would be our next step. And there are 2 screws, if I remember correctly. So one here and then one here that we need to remove to get this power supply board out. So again, be very careful when you're handling this board. It has had live current on it. The caps will hold power, and we just don't want to end up in any type of unfortunate situation. So these screws are usually in the side. It might be black in the Intellivision 2s, but they are slightly shorter with a wider pin head. So 2 screws there. Get an angle so I can touch the screw and only the screw. Okay. And then with that, picking up on the sides of the board, that is our power supply. And this is also when we start to do our mods, where we will start by replacing capacitors. So these have been here for a very long time. They look pretty good. I'm not seeing any bulging. They did use high quality components for the time. We're just doing it to push it into the next 40 years, make sure everything's okay. Alright, we also have this insulation piece. This just kind of separates the board from the cavity. So this is the cavity that the power cord comes into, and it just pulls through here. So, okay, let's talk about removing the controllers. It might make this easier to come out. You'll see they have little ribbon cables here. What I would do is just take a pair of pliers and kind of get into the teeth and gently pull those out until those come out. And then the other side, if you look, it looks to be under the ribbon cable. So we'll want to very, very gently pull the ribbon cable out around that ribbon cable. So again, try to not mess with that too much. You can see here it already has some pin damage. Again, when we get to the port, kind of get into one of the pins and gently push outwards, rock it back and forth. It's usually a pretty loose connection. Okay, at this point I'm going to also remove the power supply. So this is pretty simple. We're going to do 2 screws on the power switch. 1. You see the power switch kind of come out there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling this through. And now I can remove the transformer. Nice crisp. It should have the same kind of screw that we used in the power switch. So let's take a look at that. It's a slightly bigger head, so make sure to keep those together. Okay, again, be mindful of currents and what may be left in electronics. That's a big old honking transformer here. If you ever needed to replace that, that's something that's pretty easy to replace. You can find the right information on this, but we'll just set that entire assembly aside. Okay, so now we have our power components all removed. We have our controller components all removed. It's time to get the board out. And I think the real challenge here there's 2 plastic posts here that may be grabbing on pretty hard, that you may have some trouble kind of wiggling those out. I certainly did just off camera before, but if you pull those off, you'll get to the very bottom of the case. You'll get to the board itself. So we'll set this aside to get cleaned, and here we are. This is the Intellivision main board itself, and you can see that unlike the Intellivision 2, it is surrounded by a RF shield to meet the FCC requirements. So the next phase, when we actually start modifying this, is the shield is actually soldered on. So we will take a desoldering gun and remove all the solder to open the shield, and then reveal the actual console itself. So pretty exciting stuff here, getting down to the nitty-gritty of it. But again, looking at the electronic components, we have the power supply, the Intellivision, we have our controller ports, and then of course we have the case that everything fit in. So I think that's it. In the next video, I think we'll be actually going through the cleaning process of the plastic pieces, and then we will get into the actual electronics. So thanks for watching, and look forward to the next video.